Well, good morning. Welcome to our morning devotions. And we are in Deuteronomy chapter 22 and some very interesting material here. This is episode 89. I had entitled this Being Neighborly, Cross Dressing, Nests, which deals with birds and their eggs, and railings. Railings, like around things. So, being neighborly, cross dressing, nests, which is the birds and their eggs, and putting up railings. So, it's. I think this is a very interesting passage of scripture, and we're just going to look at it here for a minute. The first part is about being neighborly, and it has to do with what happens with somebody's ox if it gets out and runs away and you come across it. Okay? And I'm going to make application here that I think is going to be helpful as we understand the New Testament. Let me just get ahead of myself here a little bit, and that is when Christ said that man, the Sabbath was made for man, and man was not made for the Sabbath. That is what he was saying is the Sabbath is subservient to the man, and the man is not subservient to the Sabbath. That's the point he's making. Then he says he's the Lord of the Sabbath. He's the one that established the Sabbath in the first place. Um, the key to this is that there's no conflict in the Old Testament law. The Pharisees created a conflict in the Old Testament law and applied it to Christ, and Christ corrected them as they misapplied the law. Because in this portion of scripture it's this story about if your ox falls in the ditch, do you get it out? And Christ wants to know whether or not you can get the ox out on the Sabbath. Are you supposed to just, it says right here, you're not supposed to leave it in there. You're supposed to help and get it out. So is there contradiction in the law? Like on the Sabbath, you can't do it when here in this part of the law it says you're supposed to? No, because it was never wrong to do good on the Sabbath. It was never wrong to do good on the Sabbath. Only those things that were self centered and those things that were in the spirit or violating the law didn't have anything to do with the law are the things that were spoken of. But it was never, ever wrong to do good on the Sabbath. And Christ, all the way through the New Testament, is healing on the Sabbath to try to make the point to these guys that when he's doing good on the Sabbath, he is not violating the law, even if we were living in the Old Testament, which Jesus was, he was still living in the Old Testament. The New Testament doesn't start until the crucifixion in the New Covenant and then the establishment of the church in Acts chapter 2. And so that's what that's what this is all about. We're going to establish here that this is just being neighborly, and that's what Christ was asking these guys in the New Testament. And it's in the next chapter, but it's the same thing as here about. Remember, he and his disciples are going through the field of corn, and they have the kernels of corn, and they're eating it. And they said, well, these guys are shucking corn on the Sabbath. Well, the same thing is here in the next chapter. That was never a violation of the law. I mean, it's in chapter 23. I mean, it's the next chapter over. And the same thing with harvest. If you're going through a vineyard, you can pluck grapes and eat out of the vineyard while you're walking through the vineyard as well, or somebody's vineyard or somebody's field with corn. The prohibition here is not Sabbath. The Sabbath. The prohibition is you can only take what you can while you're going through it. You're not supposed to bring some kind of container and harvest the other guy's corn and grapes. I mean, don't go through there with a box or a bag and start harvesting it and walk out with his stuff. But you can pluck on the way out and get something to eat on the way through the field or the way through the vineyard. That is built into the law, and to do so on the Sabbath is not a violation of the Sabbath, as if in the Sabbath there's these contradictions. Christ is making clear these contradictions do not exist because it is never wrong to do right on the Sabbath, even in the Old Testament. Now we're not living there. Christ keeps the Sabbath for us. The Sabbath is kept in the person of Jesus Christ. He keeps all the law for us because we know what James says: if you violate the law on one point, you violate it all. So it doesn't matter if you've done anything wrong. Then let's just say that you've ever told a lie. Okay, that's bearing false witness, or you've ever coveted in your heart. okay, then that's a violation of the law. So it doesn't matter what the Pharisees said. So because these guys were like very rigid law keepers, but if they ever coveted in their heart or ever had a prevaricated thought, their lying thought, I mean, it doesn't matter how good they were on Sabbath keeping; they were still a violation of it all. Anyway, so let's look. I just wanted to get that out because I thought that was marvelous because that's what's here. So let's see about this ox deal. He says, thou shalt not see thy brother's ox or his sheep go astray, and hide thyself from them. That is, you see they broke through the fence. You don't say, well, tough beans, it's hard on my neighbor. This happened to us once. One night I got up in the middle of the winter, and I could hear all this commotion in the backyard, and I went into the kitchen, looked out the window because the yard light was on, and all of the cows of my neighbor, who was a great guy, great family, a great neighborhood we lived in there in Michigan, a great neighborhood of farmers. All his cows had broken out, and for some reason, his whole herd is in my backyard. So what do I do? Say, tough. His cows are all out. No, you call him right up. I say, yeah, your cows are in the backyard, and then you have to go about the business of getting them back inside the fence, right? That's what this is about. You do something. You don't just say, that guy, he's your neighbor, so help him out. Help him out. And this, I think, is very timely because of what's happened in other parts of our country and the help that's needed in other parts of our country because of what's happened in the hurricane and the terrible damage that's been done in the center portion of America. I mean, Christians and your neighbor, and the same thing here. Neighbors help each other out here in this part of Virginia. I'm not so sure about Northern Virginia, but here the neighbors are tremendous help. That's what this is. Your ox gets out, you don't just ignore it. It says, thou shalt in any case bring him again unto thy brother. That is, go get him and take him back. Don't just let him wander and get lost. And, let's keep going. And if thy brother be not nigh unto thee, that is, his farm's a long ways away, and that ox has been out a long time and is a long ways from the farm. If thy brother be not nigh unto thee, or if thou know him not, then thou shalt bring it unto thine own house. That is, if you're not sure whose it is, you still don't just leave it out there wandering. An ox is like the tractor of the day. I mean, this is a very valuable piece of fleshly machinery. This is what's pulling all your implements in your wagon. I mean, this is the motor of your farm. And if your ox was missing, you'd say, "Oh man!" I mean, everything is stopped until you can get another one. So, if it's from your brother who's a long ways away, or if you don't know whose it is, it tells us here, you bring it into thine own house, and it shall be with thee until thy brother seek after it, and thou shalt restore it to him again. That is, you bring it into your own farm, put it in your own barn, feed it, take care of it, and wait for the owner to find it, all right, and say, yeah, I have it here, and then when he comes, give it to him. So you're looking after it. This is very interesting. This is costing you something now because it's somebody else's ox. It doesn't say you can't use it, but the idea is when he comes looking for it, it goes back to the proper owner because you've been taking care of it. And it says, in like manner, thou shalt do with his ass, so shalt thou do with his raiment. This is what you do with everything. Because he starts with the most powerful piece of farm equipment, so to speak, is the ox. He says same thing with the ass, okay? That is not quite as powerful, but very valuable. How about his clothes? You find a coat that's laying around. What do? All right? You got it. You do your best to get it back to him. And with all lost things of thy brothers which he hath lost, whatever it is, whatever he's lost, he lost his coat. People lose things all the time. He lost his wallet. He lost his keys. All right? You do your best to pick it up and get it back to him. And if you don't know whose it is, you hang on to it until somebody comes looking for it. Now, sometimes you know how that happens. Sometimes people never come looking for it. You've been hanging on to it for a long time. And finally, it's like people say, well, it's going to be yours. But the idea in the spirit of it is you wait to get it back to the rightful owner. He says, with all the lost things which thy brother hath lost, and thou hast found, shalt thou do likewise. Thou mayest not hide thyself. See, that's the thing. I found his stuff. I'm not telling him I'm keeping it. No, that is not what you do. And you don't say, oh, it's too bad, and you just let it go. You don't do anything about it. All right? This is the being neighborly part. And then here's verse 4. Thou shalt not see thy brother's ass or his ox fall down by the way. He's fallen into the ditch, the whole ditch story. And hide thyself from them. Yeah, you don't. He needs help now. He can't get out of the mire or out of the ditch or out of the hole that he's fallen in. You don't just let it go and walk by and say, yeah, there it is, and it's not my business. I'm staying out of this. That's not what you do. He says, thou shalt surely help him to lift them up again. And this is the whole what if your ox falls into the ditch on the Sabbath? The law says that you go and help him because that is a good thing. And there is no contradiction, is the point. That is what Christ is saying, that the Sabbath is subservient to the man, and the man is not subservient to the Sabbath. And when Christ is saying, he says, I'm Lord, I'm the master of the Sabbath anyway. All right, to all you Pharisees who don't think it's right to heal a lame man on the Sabbath. Is that a good thing? Is it? Yes, absolutely. But when these Pharisees put the Sabbath above everything else, all according to their idea, all good things come to an end on the Sabbath, and that was never what the Sabbath was ever intended for. And all the Sabbatarians out there that think that there's still some New Testament Sabbath keeping, that Sabbath keeping never brought an end to doing good things. Never. However you practice the Sabbath. Most Sabbatarians that I'm familiar with, and I don't live in their homes, but it's like they just go into a day of passivity. It's just a day of rest and doing nothing. That's not the way Christ did the Sabbath. The Sabbath for him was not a day of nothing. The Sabbath a day of him was a day of healing and helping and doing good. You see? The Sabbath of the Lord was way more like our Sunday than the Pharisees' Sabbath. It wasn't just doing nothing. It was doing good. Now there was things here that could be done in the Sabbath that shouldn't be done, and they were actual labors. It wasn't sanctifying the Sabbath. And I'm not saying Sunday and the Sabbath are the same thing, but I want you to get the idea here that what the Pharisees were doing to the Lord was a complete misunderstanding of what the Sabbath was all about. And Christ was just saying, this is the way the law was always supposed to work. It's always good to do good on the Sabbath. Healing on the Sabbath is a good thing. I mean, getting a guy's ox out of the ditch on the Sabbath is a good thing because the Sabbath is there to please God. Anyway, okay. So it's not just lay around. All right. That was not the Lord's Sabbath. It wasn't just laying around. He was out doing good because it's never wrong to do good, even on the Sabbath. And here it is right here built into the law. Okay, that's like point number one. Then you have this. This is my cross-dressing. This verse says, a woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man. And generally that verse in my life is turned out to be a particular tradition about not wearing pants. And I think there's probably some value to that. But when you read what this really means within its context, the greater issue here is modesty. But the point here is cross-dressing, not whether or not women wear pants in the 70s, all right? And I have too many of these stories how churches were split over, and I would go in and fill pulpits for people. And then people would say, before I would come, they said, do you believe that women can wear pants? Because that was like the end all of sanctification was, do women wear pants? All right? And I know different guys were going through different things at different times, and people have different levels of consciousness in regard their conscience in regards to this. And I'm not discounting all of that. That's not it. But this is not about a singular issue of pants. All right, that's not what this is about. This is cross-dressing. This is a man that wears a dress. This is the transgender stuff that we're seeing. That's what this is about. This is the abomination. That's why God calls it an abomination. And this has specific reference to what men wear and women wear. And the first thing is to draw a distinction between a man and a woman. And let me just say, because that is the emphasis, that you're supposed to be able to draw a distinction between the sexes. They're supposed to outwardly appear differently. And that division is what God desired, and that's one reason why this is in here. There is a distinction, and we identify the distinction by the things we wear. And in forthrightly, it is because of God made men and women in different shapes. We appear differently because of the shape of our body. All right. And if you were going to argue this transgender thing, then a woman would cease to look like a woman, and a man would begin to look. A man would cease to look like a man. That's what this is about. And if so, let me just go back to the pants thing. I don't know anybody in my lifetime that wear pants that still did not look like women. They just didn't. I have seen women wearing pants that did not look like women, and that's what this is about. They wrap themselves up so tight, or they cut their hair in such a way, and they wear men's clothing that you would never know that they were women. That's what this is about. And now we see men dressing like women, makeup, hairstyle. I just saw a picture on Facebook of some guy that had a woman's hairdo, and he's dressed like a woman. And we know what that's about because it's upon us now here in America. That's why it's an abomination to God. And beyond that, there's other specifics here. That is within the exegetical tradition of this passage. Women were never supposed to go to war. They were never supposed to arm themselves. A woman was not supposed to be wearing body armor in our society. They were not supposed to be in the military in the sense of being on the front line. And they were not supposed to be in the Marines, and they're not supposed to be in the Army. It's not that they can't serve the war effort, but they were not supposed to be dressed in battle gear, to be dressed like a man. That belonged in the exegetical tradition only to men. And all I would say is we need to get back to that. All right, that's just my opinion. If I was talking to the Joint Chiefs, no matter what the feminists say, no women would be in the front line. I mean, they would be on the back line. They'd be doing everything else that they can do, but not on the front line. All right, that's what this is in regards to. And that could all be gauged, but that's what this principle was about. Let me tell you a little bit more about this cross-dressing thing. It was interesting that the pagan nations, and it's just the commentaries. You can all look this up. You can probably Google it yourself. But when they would worship their pagan gods, the men would wear dresses, and the women would dress like men, because as they worshiped their pagan gods, which was just satanic, the way they appeared in the worship of their god was the opposite of what is normal and what is accepted. It is the opposite. It is the opposite of what a man and woman should do. Men wear men's clothes, women wear women's clothes. They're designed for that, and the fact that this role is reversed shows how upside down that pagan religious practice was. And they would worship their gods dressed as the other sex. And when I read that, I thought to myself, I mean, how religious is what we're seeing around here? How religious is it? Is it just not simply immoral or an abomination, but is there this religious factor that's going on here because of these ancient practices? So beyond the fact that it blurred the edges of the sexes, there were these specific things that women were not supposed to dress as. They were not supposed to put on battle gear, and this was a practice that pagan individuals did in the worship of their false gods. All right, it was a reversal of what's natural. It was interesting when you read the commentary, and I shared this with my wife. I said, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that you can't walk naked through the marketplace. It never says that anywhere. So if it doesn't say it anywhere, and if we go that way, if it doesn't say it, I guess it doesn't prohibit it. So why don't we walk naked through the marketplace? And why isn't that in the Bible? See, it's just something to think about. It is because we have a sense of propriety that is built into us that by nature, that's inappropriate. That is, you don't have to have God to tell you that that's not the right thing to do. The same thing is tied in with this as well. There's certain things that Uh, Paul writes, does not even nature teach you that it's a shame for a man to have long hair? And that long hair issue there has to do with a woman's hairdo. Isn't it a shame for a guy to go into a beauty salon and come out with a hairdo like our wives or girlfriends would wear? See, yes, it is. Nature teaches us, just like it teaches us it's a shame to walk through a marketplace naked. And this is this is just a straight up abomination, is what we're looking at here. All right. That's the cross dressing. It says the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. All right. I know you get into some of this stuff. Okay, let me keep going. Then there's this thing about the next thing here is about birds and eggs. So if you come across a nest, if a bird's nest chance to be before thee in the way in any tree or on the ground, so it's in a tree or it's on the ground, all right, whether they be young ones or eggs, okay, and the dam, or that is the bird or the goose or the chicken or whatever, okay, the duck is sitting on the eggs. Uh, let's see, and whether they be young ones or eggs, and the dam sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, thou shalt not take the dam with the young. You don't just clear out the entire nest. There's mountains of commentary on this. You say to yourself, I mean, and I just can't do it all this morning because it's so fascinating. Because basically, it all comes down to this: when it says God's eye is on the sparrow, He knows He's watching us. That whole idea, He has the number, your hairs of your head numbered, and all of that. This just speaks of the intimate details that the law engages in about what to do with birds and their eggs, and it speaks of the idea of love, charity, and compassion. A true human, godly spirit towards God's creation. The commentators talk about that. This is something that if we practice this kind of compassion, it just flows into everything else. He says, it basically you leave the mom because the mom's going to lay more eggs. All right, you can take the eggs, but you leave the mom. You don't just kill the things off. All right, that's what this is in regards to. And then there's all these other things that have been written in regards to this, but that's fundamentally what it's about. You don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg. All right, the eggs are okay, but don't kill the goose because the goose is going to be there to provide more. The chicken is going to be there to provide more eggs. All right. He goes on, but thou shalt in any wise let the dam go. All right, let the dam go, and take the young to thee, that it may be well with thee, and if you let the dam go, but even if you take the little chicks, they're going to grow up to be chickens, right? And you're going to have more eggs. Of all the things that's in God's word, see, here's some more flyover verses. Who really cares about chickens and eggs? God does. God does. All right. Thou shalt. It says that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest prolong thy days. And then the last thing here is new construction, putting up railings. The houses back in those days had flat roofs. It says, when thou buildest a new house, then thou shalt make a battlement for the roof. Then the battlement just means put a railing around the edge or build a wall up, all right, from the edge, because the roof is flat. You're going to go up on the top of the roof, all right, and you're going to use that for living space, all right? But when you get up on the top of the roof, if it doesn't have an edge, you might slip off the edge, fall from the top of the roof, and kill yourself or kill a neighbor, all right? So it's built in the law here. I remember when I was a kid, my dad went through this. I said, this is very interesting, because some people resist some of these things because they say, well, the state is mandating this. This was not mandated by the state. Well, it's mandated by the theocracy. But there's good common sense for you and your family and for your neighbors when they come over and you guys are enjoying the iced tea on top of the roof, right? There's good reason there to have a railing in case somebody slips or somebody is ready to fall or loses their balance and falls off the roof and hurts themselves. So you put up a battlement, a little wall, right, or a railing to protect them. It says, when thou buildest a new house, Then thou shalt make a battlement for thy roof, that thou bring not blood upon thine house, if any man fall from thence. And that goes into all kinds of things. Like if there's ice on your sidewalk and you know there's people coming, or your own family, you should get something out there. You should either go out there and shovel the snow off your steps and off your sidewalk, or put some de-icer out there so if people come up, they're not going to slip coming into your house. That's not there, but it's the idea. How can you help your neighbors so they don't hurt themselves on your property? Yeah, you don't want people that you want over to be hurt, so you take precautions. That's all this is. You're looking out for your neighbors. You're being neighborly. Uh, when people say there's nothing in the Word of God, and you get deep into the Book of Deuteronomy, you say, "Really, what is there in there?" Give me something out of the Gospels. We'll get to the Gospels. But my goodness, the Word of God is an amazing book. It is an amazing book, and I only get a few minutes here, but I just want you to think about these things. What is this? Just Tuesday? October 1st. October 1st. Can you believe that? Well, the Lord bless you. You have a great day. If there's any comments, questions, I'm always open. Share this with as many people as you can. Get the word out. All right. I think this is episode 89. 89. So we're still at it. Well, the Lord bless you. You have a great day. We'll see you.